Hi, welcome to the Ellis Talker Show. I'm DV LeBron. I want to apologize before we start on the show. I've been a little under the weather today, but I definitely want to get this out to you. Uh, Congressman Ellzey, thank you so much for coming on the show. How are you?
I'm doing great. It's always fun to talk to you on your show. I really enjoy the collaboration and the fact that you love our brothers and sisters in the military and our veterans so much. You know, we've got that connection that only you and I understand, and it's just I always enjoy getting into the meaty issues with you and for our listeners in Ellis County. And like I said last time, you're so good at this that this should be not just Ellis County. This should be regional, statewide, and you should be making a very good living off of the way you conduct interviews. Some people have a gift, some people don't, and you have that gift of making your guests always feel welcome, regardless of which political side of the spectrum that they're on. And you know that is a gift. That's a God-given gift, and you've got it. And so I think you found your niche. Let's make it bigger.
Congressman, thank you so much. That's humbling. You know what? I talked. We pray, and I said, God, just keep me humble when I do this, and I've been staying humble, so it won't go. Yeah, it won't go. And then my wife will remind me if my head's getting a little big. But thank you so much for that.
That's how he answers that prayer. You're married, and she will.
Yeah, she'll
Mine sure
slap.
does.
Yeah, yeah, bring you down a notch.
And so do my kids.
Oh yeah. So you've been doing a lot. You've been running around your district today, and you've been doing a lot in for your district. So I want you to go ahead and just kind of talk about your constituent services and some of the things you've been doing.
Well, as most of your listeners probably know, we do have three district offices. We have one in Arlington, we have one in Waxahachie, we have one in Corsicana, which is where I'm coming to you from, and
That's a first, right? That's a first.
That's a first in Corsicana, and it is the prettiest office we have. It's right here on the beautiful Main Street, right across from the bistro here in Corsicana. The people come in here all the time. Lots of room. People just come in and commiserate and get a cup of coffee. But most importantly, we have a very talented and dedicated group of employees whose job it is and to serve the people of this district. No matter what your issue is, you want to come in and just have an ear to rely on, or you've got some casework issues, whether you're a veteran, Social Security, IRS, or any other matter that's important to you at all. If we can't handle it at the federal level from my congressional offices, then we'll pass it off to my cohorts in the state legislature or the local county officials. And we love to do that. We love to help the people here. And that's how we hire people. You know, I was an airline pilot for many, many years, and the airline that I won't name here, but it doesn't really matter. The airline hired people based on their servant's heart. And I took that to heart. And so that's the people that I hire here too. Some of them came with me from Austin. Some of them are up in DC. My chief of staff, I've known for 30 years. He and I went through flight school together. And we have a uniquely talented group that's probably going to get better with the new district going from 3 counties to 9 and much more geographical area that just want to help the people of this district. And I'm so proud and humbled to work with these people. And they're very, very smart. They're very, very diligent. And they're very timely. So they're professional, timely, have servants' hearts. And whatever you need, I would encourage any of your listeners here, they've got an issue. It really doesn't matter what it is. And they need an ear to listen to them. Contact my office at one of those 3 offices. Call them on the phone, email them. You will get a response. Our turnaround time is 2 weeks for emails. Working with some government agencies takes a little while from time to time, but we will get back to you. And so, you know, we kind of have the ability to do a lot of different things. And if one person can't handle it, that's not what their expertise is in, then we'll find the people who are, and we'll move it from there. And we're also doing a new thing that I rolled out 2 weeks ago, a speech called Joys and Concerns. When I was growing up, my preacher, before he did the sermon, he would do this section where it would be called Joys and Concerns. And we talk about achievements or wonderful things, births, birthdays, but also issues concerning some folks in our community who needed help. They were sick. They needed their prayers. And, you know, I think I rolled one of those out on the House floor a couple of weeks ago, and the parliamentarian was watching after I did it. And all I was doing was announcing valedictorians, salutatorians, people who had accomplished great things. There were retirements and some folks who needed help. And I'm willing to say a prayer on the floor of the U.S. House to do that for people. And when I turned around and done the speech, the parliamentarian looked at me and she said, "Thank you for doing that," because so much of what they hear on the floor of the House is parlor tricks and some theater. That the American people deserve to hear good things too, and that's kind of where I come from. We know what the problems are in this nation. We all feel them every day. The inflationary effects of these policies from this government, high cost of food, especially the high cost of everything.
Yeah, we're going to get into that because there's a lot going on there.
I'm sorry I went off on that, but if anybody in your
good.
audience has something they want me to bring up on the House floor, I'm happy to say their name. Somebody 90 years old, I'll say their name. They're having a birthday, I'll say their name. It's really something fun I get to do because we listen, and my job is to represent. My job is also to educate myself on the issues that are just outside our community, and tell the folks back at home, here's what I'm thinking about doing. And so it's part representation, part leadership. And that's what I hope that I've been doing, always with quiet professionalism, so that the people here are well represented.
And that I want to thank you for serving your community in this way. Veterans serve and continue to serve. One thing I did want to thank you on was I know that you made phone calls on the recent vote to start on a veterans court. Miss Ann Montgomery and Judge William Wallace are the spearhead for this and making it happen. And I know that you were in support. I was in the audience to put a speech out, and several other veterans. And I think it's a good thing for Ellis County, and I appreciate that you backed us on it.
Man, it's been I'm so pleased, so grateful, so proud. And the DA Ann Montgomery and Judge Wallace should be applauded by everybody who's listening here. If you know them, reach out and say thank you, because the Veterans Treatment Court has helped many, many veterans statewide. And I'm so proud that Ellis County has one now. And I think a lot of veterans are going to benefit from this, and it makes for a better community. So thank you, and thank you for your advocacy for it too. And you've been beating the drum, and you deserve a great share of that gratitude as well.
No, I'm just a little guy. They're the decision makers had to make it happen. I just wanted it to, I really did. There are a lot of brothers and sisters, and I work in that field.
Yeah.
There's a lot of brothers and sisters, unfortunately, that have hit that, and that is, or had those problems and could have used the Veterans Court instead of a felony conviction, and right. That could have been the difference, and getting the treatment that they need. Yes. So, on, I don't know if you wanted to put out anything more on your constituent services, but, there is a lot of stuff going on. If you haven't noticed, we are breaking records on the amount of people coming in. I think it was last month we had like 200 plus thousand, like the population of San Francisco.
Yeah.
And those are the ones that they know. There's a lot of gotaways that they don't know. Yes. There's a lot going on the border. I want to go ahead and ask you, what are your thoughts on that? And to tell your constituents?
Well, that's a great question. I did go to the border with Congressman Tony Gonzalez, my fellow Navy veteran and very, very good friend. We went down to Eagle Pass last week, and we were on the river. We were talking to Border Patrol. By the way, most of these Border Patrol agents, they don't come from somewhere else. They live in those communities. They have their families in those communities, so it's very important to them. And the thing that they delivered to us more than anything was the national security issue. And you brought up the gotaways. This fiscal year alone, which means from October 1st, it's not a calendar year. The government runs on fiscal years. Starting in October 1st, we have 140,000 gotaways. And those are people who literally didn't want to get caught for one reason or another. Those people are traffickers. Those people are MS-13 gang members who are being dispersed throughout the entire nation. Every state is a border state. Every county is a border county. The crimes that you're seeing committed, the gun crimes, the drug crimes, the trafficking crimes up in Chicago, Minnesota, throughout this entire country are people coming from MS-13. MS-13 is an El Salvadoran gang. So most of the people who are coming up, in fact, almost all of them, are not from Mexico. So Mexico has an immigration problem too on their southern border. So these folks are coming up From there, we got more Cubans coming across from the Mexican border than we did in the Mariel boat lift in the 80s. More Cubans who were flying into Mexico and then coming up into the United States illegally. The MS-13 problem is extensive, but we also have, think about it this way. We had 105,000 deaths last year in the United States for people aged 18 to 45. The number one killer was overdoses. So of those 105,000, 2/3 of them are from fentanyl. All of the fentanyl chemicals come from the Chinese Communist Party and make its way through Mexico. Then it's assembled by the cartel and brought up through the border to kill Americans. World War II lasted from December 7th, 1941 to August 14, 1945. During that time, we lost 416,800 American servicemen and women to combat defending freedom across the world. That comes out to 305 Americans a day giving their lives in World War II. Last year, we lost 287 Americans every day to overdoses. We are in a war on drugs. The cartels represent a clear and present danger to the national security of the United States, and we need to declare them as such and treat them as such. There's not 105,000 Chinese dying every year from fentanyl. It's making its way here, and it's called asymmetric warfare. If you can't defeat an enemy on the battlefield, you will find other means of fighting them elsewhere. And the fentanyl issue is only going to get worse, and that's how they're destroying 18 to 45-year-olds, people who should be getting married, having jobs, having children, paying taxes, and serving in our military. And it's while we spent 2 weeks, 24/7 on the Uvalde tragedy, which is what it was, they're not spending 1 second on the tragedy that is the overdose epidemic in the United States, killing just as many people as we lost in World War II on a daily basis. That's scary.
That is scary. Fentanyl is coming up. I did talk with the chief of police of Midlothian. I'm hoping to reach out to Waxahachie as well. And I talked with our county sheriff about the drugs and sex trafficking and human trafficking that's going on. And they're all interconnected. And fentanyl is a growing problem in the area. Right now, marijuana, as far as Midlothian PD said, is kind of meth and the traditional ones, but opiates are making big comebacks. Fake pills, these Xanax bars that these kids use, and they're killing them. And that's all coming over that border. So, is there legislation that if the Republicans take the House, that's going to be introduced to deal with that?
There already is, but when you're in the minority, that stuff never sees the light of day. For whatever reason, I have twice now, Secretary Alejandro Mayorkas, the Secretary of the Department of Homeland Security, has said that we have operational control of the border. Now, there's two ways to take that. Number one, he's doing it intentionally, which is impeachable, or he's lying and it's also impeachable. And I don't toss that word around because I think 2016 to 2020, we were impeachment crazy with the way the Democrats handled Donald Trump. But if you are responsible for Homeland Security and you're not securing the homeland and you're lying about it to Congress, you should be impeached. So either he's incompetent or he's intentionally doing it, which is far, far worse. But when then the president describes going to build a wall in Arizona so you can help get Mark Kelly reelected to the Senate, but you're not talking about this Texas border. These border communities are being overwhelmed. Our hospitals, our schools throughout the nation are being overwhelmed by this problem. But also we've talked about the immigration issue, fentanyl, but we also have the human trafficking issue, which I think the left likes to change definition of words. For instance, we are now in a recession. We've had 2 quarters of a decline in GDP, 1.6, the previous quarter, 0.9% decline in GDP. That's definition of a recession. This administration won't call it that. Well, the same thing with human trafficking. Human trafficking is modern day human slavery. Let's call it what it is. And it's the trafficking of men, women, and children, boys and girls, for the sex trade in the United States. The trafficking of human beings for the sex trade in the United States. There's nothing more evil than that. There is good and evil in this world. This nation is a moral nation that has always done good. And we need to recognize whether it's Vladimir Putin, who is evil, and he is, or it's the trafficking of human beings across the border, which the cartels are doing. And once again, that cartel, you want to talk about operational control, the cartels have operational control of the Mexican state.
Did you see that when you were down there? When you were down there, what were some of the kind of things that you were seeing the cartel doing?
Well, we only saw 2 swimmers, but the cartel knew that they had a congressional delegation down there. So when we were at the bridge in Eagle Pass, the Mexican side of the river was completely vacant. There was nobody there. And when I say nobody, there was nobody there. They knew we would be watching with cameras rolling, and they had nobody. The parks were empty, the streets were empty. It was kind of bizarre, but they know what's going on, and they know where we have people. They know where we don't have people. They know where we're just going to let them cross. It is absolutely abysmal, and we can rant and rave all we want to until there's a change of leadership. This is why elections have consequences, and if there's people out there who are saying we just need, we don't, if they're not paying attention to the border, they're not paying attention to national security or human tragedy or the moral morass that we are in of human trafficking and fentanyl, and they need to be removed. So if you're participating in anything else other than trying to get good people who want to secure our nation and secure our borders elected, you're doing the wrong thing. And so Tony Gonzalez has been, he's represents Uvalde. He represents the border. He's had numerous border visits by congressmen and state legislators down there. And man, he's working his tail off just to get people aware of this. But I think that's probably a contributor to why most Americans believe our nation is headed in the wrong direction, because this administration is not taking care of Americans. They seem to be begging Saudi for oil when we were energy independent 2 years ago, and when we're spending trillions of dollars on Green New Deal issues, and they're being very Marie Antoinette, saying, well, if you don't like the price of gas, just go buy a Tesla. The people who have to drive 30 miles each way to go to a $15 an hour job, they can't afford $5 a gallon gas. That eats into everything they've got. And then let's say you go to Chipotle and a burrito bowl is $14 now. That's fine dining for most of us. I went and I got one for me and my wife the other day and spent $30 because I got an extra portion of chicken, and I went, $30 for 2 bowls. Yeah. 6 months ago, that was $20. Everybody's feeling the pinch. Everybody's feeling the pain. And then they say, let them eat cake. That's essentially the attitude of this administration. And people are not, the American people are smart, and especially people in our district. They know when it's raining and when somebody's doing something else.
Is there things that leadership is talking about if the Republicans take Congress that they'd like to do about that inflation issue, or at least bills or anything like that?
Well, we have to stop the spending. When we know there's a direct measure between trillion-dollar spending bills like we did during COVID that led to this inflationary rate. Now in order to control inflation, you have to raise the interest rates. But if you raise the interest rates, and the Fed has already missed the boat. They're already way behind timeline on that. So if they actually raise the interest rate to the point at which we can slow down the inflationary rate, we won't be able to afford the interest payment on the debt. They missed it. They missed the whole thing. They were completely. Janet Yellen, who's now the Secretary of the Treasury, was the chairman of the Fed when they missed this, and the current chairman of the Fed missed it too. They've lost control of the chariot. The horses are running away, or the wagon. The horses are running away with the wagon, and there's nothing they can do to slow it down. So, and now we're in a recession, and then they're claiming that we're not. So they're treating the American people like fools, and then they're turning around and saying we just need more green. We need more solar and more wind. No, we need cheap fuel. Hybrids do all the work that an electric car can on slowing down whatever effects of climate change are out there. But additionally, China is the largest contributor to greenhouse gases in the world, and they're not beholden to the standards that we hold ourselves to, because they're considered a developing country. They're the second largest economy in the world, and they're still considered by the UN a developing nation. None of this, the people who are in charge are just nuts. The elites that claim to run this country right now and the UN are just out of their minds. They're completely incompetent. and we need more common sense up in Washington, D.C. So I'll answer that. We need to cut back on spending. Kevin McCarthy has said that all spending bills come from the House. That's
Mhm.
all spending
That
comes from the House of Representatives. He's talking about a 50-year plan of fiscal solvency for the United States. As it is, though, we can't shut down our economy because we are still the world leader in the economy, and anything that we do that's detrimental to that would be catastrophic worldwide. And right now, we're seeing the effects of how interlinked our economies are in this world, whether we like it or not. And that's just we're not an independent nation economically. We get so many goods and services and essentials for what we manufacture here in the United States that
right.
everything's interconnected. And I wish it weren't. I really wish it weren't. But I'll tell you this much: we didn't have to rely on sending ships to Saudi Arabia to protect tankers for a couple of years under Governor Rick Perry, Secretary Rick Perry, and Donald Trump. And then this administration took over. Now he's going over and fist bumping the Crown Prince and asking for more oil when we have all the capacity here. We have it right here. And we produce energy cleaner than any other nation on the planet. Why would he do that?
Yeah, it's maddening. It's maddening. I went ahead and let you get into that section because we were on a roll on it, but I'm going to take you back real quick because you had mentioned it. Uvalde. I want you to kind of speak about that tragedy. And then you guys just passed a quote unquote assault weapons ban in the House. I want you to, unfortunately, the two have to be linked. And I want you to speak on one and then speak on the other.
Well, first of all, I have hesitated and will continue to not speak on Tony Gonzalez. That's his district. And I never, as soon as it happened, I said, as a naval aviator who's done aircraft mishap investigations, I wait until the investigation is complete. It's still ongoing, but there were multiple faults. There were a multitude of things that went wrong that day. And so it was a tragedy, and we should meet those out. I think one thing we're seeing is when you shut down schools, the 2-year shutdown of COVID has had an adverse effect that many of us declared that it would. If you shut down schools and kids aren't socializing in school, which is, for many of them, and particularly that young man, he didn't have a family life, and he was shut down. The schools were shut down, and then he went off to a dark place, and committed a heinous crime in a school that wasn't even his school. There were so many things that went wrong. The assault weapons ban was a bill that didn't go through committee. It was virtue signaling. It's not going to get through the Senate. It didn't go through regular order, didn't go through a committee, didn't go through any of it. And we were surprised when we had to vote on it. I think it was Wednesday or Thursday. It just popped up in the middle of the night one night, and we had to vote on it. It was terrible. It was a terrible bill. And, a lot of things can be done, but we do need to worry about the psychological health of our children. And so when everybody said we need to shut down our schools because COVID's going to kill all of them, no, it's going to cause severe psychological harm to an entire generation of children. And we're seeing that now. And nobody wants to address the fact that people who said, don't do this, you're going to harm these kids. And it has. I mean, my kids are in public school in Ellis County, and in-school suspensions are through the roof. That didn't exist prior to COVID because kids haven't had the socialization. They've had to cover their mouths. They can't communicate. They can't smile. So much of what those kids rely on in their developmental years comes from socialization in school. And there's a severe, the long-term effects, we're still going to have to wait to find out what they are.
There have been many documented. There's been a lot of studies done on the psychological health on our kids and the suicide attempts that have risen, kind of and correlated to that, to schools being closed. And there's a lot of things going on when it comes to the mental health of our kids. Thank you so much for talking on that assault weapons ban. China's acting up, and there's a lot going on with that. Just kind of want to get your take on it. There was a lot of bluster.
You mean about Pelosi's trip?
Yeah.
Oh, yeah. Well, they did that. I went to Taiwan with Senator Cornyn back in last October, and the same thing happened. And they penetrated the air defense identification zone of Taiwan with their fighter jets and acting all tough and strong. And I'll say this, that I have probably zero agreement with Nancy Pelosi on much of anything, policy wise or philosophy wise. But when you start to threaten an American citizen, much less the third highest ranking American in our country, with the threats of harm, you're going down the wrong path. And I think the general consensus amongst most Republicans is she's an American. She represents her district. She is our Speaker of the House. Much as I'm ready for somebody else to be the Speaker of the House, you don't get to threaten an American, China, and we need to stand strong and firm. And I'll take it one step further. The era of strategic ambiguity came at a different time with different leadership in China that went from one to the other. And even though it's communist, they gave up the office every so often. Xi Jinping is now dictator for life. He said he wants to take over Taiwan. If he takes over Taiwan and their capability to build chips, which are 2 generations ahead of anything that we have in the United States, we have modern life as we know it across the globe ceases to exist as we know it now. It is a strategic partner, and we need to recognize Taiwan as the nation that it's in. I believe that the Russians invaded Ukraine with the tacit or outright approval of the Chinese to see what the Western resolve would be, because they were going to then use that to springboard into Taiwan. This is exactly like 1938. 1938, we had men of small stature with inferiority complexes surrounding themselves with yes men who started World War II. Adolf Hitler, Mussolini, the Emperor of Japan. Now we have Vladimir Putin, Xi Jinping, Kim Jong-un, and we have the Ayatollahs. Small men, inferiority complexes, surrounded by yes men, and they're all combined. We have to show strength, because schoolyard politics 101 says, if you're a bully, you're going to pick on the weak. And if you act weak, you're going to get bullied.
Yeah.
If we're strong, that doesn't happen. And we need more resolve from this president. So when Nancy Pelosi goes to Taiwan, and the only response from his spokeswoman is, well, maybe she should just take care. Oh my gosh, who is this? What is going on here? There are a lot of people, a lot of theories about how Joe Biden and China are connected. I'm not going to touch on those because I have no evidence to suggest that, but he's not acting strong. I'll tell you that.
Now, when and you mentioned Ukraine, so we'll touch on that, because we're running up on time, and I wanted you to talk about veterans issues, which is what you do in the House. So one of our viewers says, can we stop spending billions to Ukraine with no accounting? What do you think about how that money is being accounted for, and are we kind of just sending and just sending? What are your thoughts on that?
The people keep saying we're sending cash to Ukraine. We're not sending cash to Ukraine. The $40 billion that we sent, the $40 billion we allocated to the defense of Ukraine went to humanitarian efforts, weapons, and 1/4 of it, $10 billion, went to replenish the supplies that we've already given to Ukraine. Because when we're sending them javelins, we're lowering the number of javelins. Javelin's an anti-tank weapon, which is a fire and forget, meaning you get the tank in your sights, you squeeze the trigger, the javelin goes up, you turn around and go to your bunker, and the javelin hits the tank. That's very high technology stuff. There is a lot of classified information that would tell you that we know where it's going, we know how it's used. That bill, I have said at the time, and I'll say again, I angrily but proudly voted yes. I thought it was too much. I want to see some guardrails on how we spend it and a report back to Congress. It was money that was needed at the time, and we are in the minority, so I voted yes on it. And I would do so again, because the Russians have lost 15,000 of their soldiers. Their ability to conduct war is severely diminished by the bravery of the Ukrainian people. It is not a zero-sum game between anything that we're doing in the United States and national security. Because right now, if what we are seeing is with the blockade of the ports in Ukraine, we are in the grain. 36% of the world's grain comes from Ukraine. People say, why do we care about Ukraine? Because 1/3 of the world's grain comes from Ukraine. National and world security depends on that grain going to East Africa and the Middle East. 50 million people are facing starvation this year. You want to watch governments fall in worldwide war? That's how it starts. That's how the Arab Spring started in 2011, because the Egyptians weren't getting their bread and civil order broke down. You and I have and could live outside without any shelter. We can't do without food. And when we get hungry, people get
there's something behind hangry.
That's right.
And
but I'll tell you, when we take back the house, when we take back the house, if there's more money to go to Ukraine, it will be accounted for. It will be explained to the American people. But as it is, the Ukrainian people are fighting for the freedom of the Western world so that we don't have to, so that NATO doesn't have to get involved, and severely denigrating both the arms trade for Russia, because we're seeing that their equipment, when those turrets pop off after a javelin hits one of those tanks, their stuff is junk. Their planes are junk. So they're drying up their market for the weapons trade and showing that our stuff is superior, and the Chinese need to be thinking about it, as well as our tactics. In those countries, Russia and China, they don't have the NCO like you. They don't have the ability to think and make decisions as a 22-year-old E5 who can tell the 18-year-old E2, no, you need to go do this, you need to do that. They have the generals, and then they have the 18-year-olds, and that's why so many of them got killed, and they can't think on their feet. So the Ukrainians are using Western training, tactics, and techniques against the old Eastern Bloc, Communist Bloc tactics, and we're winning. So this should give China pause about anything they plan to do in Taiwan.
Okay. So I appreciate that. I wanted to go ahead and cover veterans issues because I know there was a burn pit bill, and there was some hoopla about that, Toomey amendment or something in the Senate. Can you go ahead and speak on some of the veteran issues you've been seeing in the House and that bill in particular too?
Sure. The Republicans are in the minority. We write clean bills that don't attach junk to them. That's not what happens with the other side. The burn pit bill, however, is something that is going to help not just burn pit bills. When we were in Iraq, everything we had, we threw into a pit: plastic, graphite, metal, all kinds of stuff. We threw into these burn pits, and the inhalation of that has led to severe illnesses amongst many. I was exposed to them, and I haven't had anything go wrong with me, but President Biden believes that his son got brain cancer because he was exposed to burn pits during his time in Iraq. It's a good bill. It's too expensive. It's mandatory spending versus discretionary. Mike Bost, who's the ranking member of the VA committee, said when we take back the House, he's going to commit that back to discretionary so we can spend the money the right way. Once that bill passed the House, then it went to the Senate. $280 billion price tag on that bill. It was going to help a lot of veterans. When it got to the Senate, the Democrats used a little trick called the blue card. They added a blue card to it that was going to add another $400 billion in spending on a blank check, not itemized, not line item, and certainly not for veterans. And then when somebody like Senator Pat Toomey, who a lot of people see as as squishy or whatever, I don't know the man, but he's very good on how he is highly concerned with how much debt we have in this United States. He said, now, hold on a second. This bill now went from being a veterans bill to being just a massive spending bill with no guardrails on it. And now you're using veterans as the vehicle or the mule, so to speak, for getting your junky money spending ways across the border. And I think it's a very cynical and sinister thing to do, to use veterans to come up with, you're going to use them to say, well, this is going to help veterans, and then going to add money to it, the sausage making that has nothing to do with veterans, and you don't know where that money is going. And to object, now you are against our veterans. That is patently false. It's sinister to say, and it's just simply not true. So I applaud Senator Toomey for saying, time out on this bill. This isn't what came from the House, and all spending originates in the House, except in the Senate, we just added this blue card that says we're going to spend $400 billion on whatever. That's how we got in this inflationary state right now. And I don't want our brothers and sisters, yours, mine, my friends, to be used as a vehicle with which you're going to cynically spend a lot of money that we don't have anymore. And that is just unconscionable. They found the one thing that they think that they can divide us on, and then demonize Republicans for saying, you can't spend that money. What are you doing? We did in good faith. We passed this bill to help burn pit veterans, and then you're going to attach this to it and then call us anti-vet. How dare you? That is unconscionable, and they should be ashamed, but they're not.
That word has disappeared from Western society nowadays.
Yeah,
it's long gone. Well, we've come to the end of the show. I'd like for you to go ahead and just talk.
Can we keep going?
I got time. You want to. Okay. Keep going. So what other veterans issues have come up that you kind of see, and some of the things that maybe when the Republicans, or if the Republicans retake the House, they'll work on?
Well, that's a good question. I'm not sure I'm not sure what committee I'll be on in the new session, but one of my goals is, and you and I have talked about this, is to make sure that veterans, as they're leaving the military, before they step foot as a civilian and become a veteran, that the handoff from the DoD to the VA is so seamless that they already receive we don't make it an option for you to go to the VA and get your disability rating. It's mandatory. It's part of the deal. And until you have your disability rating, you don't get released into the civilian world, because so much of your benefits, your health benefits, your employment benefits, your disability benefits, property taxes here in Texas depend on your disability rating and your hiring capabilities. So you can get a much better job if you have a disability rating when you get out, because you get a job when you get out of the military, you don't have any of those benefits. You're probably going to stick with that job, and it's a scary thing if you're uninformed on how to go get your disability rating. So the short answer is, I want there to be a seamless handoff from the DoD. And we're going to work on that. And there are many tools we can do it. It doesn't have to be a law. It can be in the NDAA, the National Defense Authorization Act. There are tools that we can use to make that happen. And I want to make it to where the veteran doesn't have to think about it or make a choice, because most of us, since we're volunteers, are unwilling to go get the disability benefits that we've earned because they just wanted to serve their country. I want to take it out of their hands and not make it a conscious thing or a conscience thing that makes them go, well, I feel guilty because there's, somebody lost their leg and I didn't lose a leg, so I'm not going to get my disability rating. I want to take it out of their hands. We owe it to them as a nation. Abraham Lincoln said it, to care for him who shall have borne the battle, and his widow and his orphan. That's our obligation to them. We should make it seamless. So that is my ultimate goal. That's how I see the veteran issue. I want to talk about mask mandates here in a second, if you've got some time.
Yeah. Let's talk about it.
Okay. I filed a bill called the Federal Mask Mandate Limitations Act. And in the Administrative Procedures Act of 1948, in an effort to just stay in elected office, Congress handed off a lot of the lawmaking and the taxing to the executive branch by saying, let's form all these agencies. Let's form the CDC. Let's form the EPA, the FCC, the FEC, the Occupational Safe and Healthy Administration. And through rules and fees, they have made laws and taxes, which is why during COVID, the CDC, Centers for Disease Control, had they assumed the authority given by Congress to not allow anybody to collect rent during COVID. Well, that's nonsense. The EPA now has the ability to say, well, here's the standards we're going to set on making of cement, but we're going to pass a $1.7 trillion infrastructure bill, but then we're not going to let you make rebar or cement. I mean, every infrastructure thing we have is based on rebar and cement. We want to take that power back for the Congress. So my Mask Mandate Limitations Act requires any agency, TSA or Department of Transportation, Health and Human Services, they want to put in a mask mandate, they have to go through Congress, and they have to get both houses, both the House and the Senate, to sign off on it. And if and only if they get that, can the president institute a mask mandate. So how do you eat an elephant? One bite at a time. So until we can repeal the Administrative Procedures Act, we're going to have to take pass laws like this to take back the power that belongs to the people, which is the Congress, not some unnamed bureaucrat who answers only to the President of the United States. The executive branch executes the laws. He shouldn't have lawmaking authority at the same time. And this administration, more than any, through the agencies and through executive order, has become both the executive and the lawmaker in this nation. I mean, think about during the time of COVID, How many laws did Congress pass concerning COVID? None. It was all agency induced. So we need to stop that. This is one bite of the elephant.
Yeah, and oversight is Congress's job, and a lot of people don't understand the administrative body. I do. I've been in the federal government a long time. I
Yep.
understand how these rules, come through and change and how they affect everything. It's like making law.
Yep.
Mr. Gary Vineyard said, "Can you address Title 10 issues being challenged in D.C.?"
Title IX issues.
Title 9.
I'm
I'm
not-
sorry.
Can you be more specific? I'm not.
The Joe Biden was put in or in the administration through one of those procedure act. They're tying it to transgender issues and stuff like that. They're tying it to school funds for needy kids that need lunch. Can you speak on that?
It's a daily effort to keep up with everything. No, this is the Gary. I'm sorry, I'm not well versed on this, but it's going to get struck down in court just like everything else he does. It's a daily effort to keep up with the things that he's doing, and sometimes I will say this: being in the minority, they don't advise us on what they're about to do, so we're playing catch up just like anybody else. So I wish I was more familiar. I can find out. And Gary, I know you, so I'm happy to do some more research on that and then address it in my next walk with me, which incidentally, I've been in DC 7 out of the last 8 weeks, and I try to do these videos, these walk with me videos on a more recent basis. So I'll do one in the next couple of days. It's probably going to be longer than most of them, so I can explain to people what's going on. You mentioned the assault weapons ban. Like I said, it's a daily effort to keep up with what they're doing because they're not running things through regular order. A bill should be filed by a member. It should go through the committee of jurisdiction. Then it should go to the rules committee and then come out to the floor. The speaker does not do that anymore. They come up with a bill in the secret room in the back, and then they plant it on the floor. And that's how. And then they've got the majority. So she keeps her caucus in line. So if she wants it to pass, it's gonna pass. And there's nothing. We don't have the numbers. So even if we had every Republican on board, they can still win every vote because they've got the majority. And until that changes,
That's four, right? Four that they got a 4-seat majority in the House, right? Or something like that.
I think it's 5, and we usually have a vacancy here or there, but yeah, 4 or 5. It's a rolling number.
Yeah, it's definitely a rolling number. But I wanted to go ahead and just give you the floor to talk directly to the people of Ellis County, and I love having you on and stuff. But when you go real long, you start losing folks. So I don't want your good message to get lost in the thing, because we could talk all day.
Yeah, so we could.
I'm going to go ahead and give you the floor, sir.
Well, veterans issues are still the priority. Every government, the primary job of any government, where it's your city, county, state, or federal, is responsible for protecting the citizens that live there. Job number one of the federal government of the United States is to protect Americans. This administration is doing anything but. That is my number one goal as a congressman, but fiscal sanity is another one. We are forced to defend our nation, and when you have inflation like this, it cuts into any cost increases. We just passed the National Defense Authorization Act, which is an increase in funding to get us the ships that we need, the raises for the troops that they need, and in times of high inflation, any increases in that gets eaten away by the inflation of the nation. But we're making a good faith effort in the House, and the National Defense Authorization Act, which is clean, coming up on the next year. It gets voted on twice. So we voted on it once. We should get it back. It is going to be a clean bill that helps defend our nation by ships, aircraft, troops, weapons systems, and helps defend our nation. That's job number one. Restoring fiscal sanity is another, and we've got to stop spending these trillions of dollars on these bills that are for Green New Deal. We have to get back to basics. We haven't had this level of debt since 1946, when we accomplished the defeat of the Axis powers in World War II, where GDP equaled our national debt. We are at that point now. And it's going to call for drastic cuts. And it's going to call for more discretionary spending instead of mandatory spending. Mandatory spending is already baked in the cake. I don't have a choice when we pass a budget. It's Medicaid, Medicare, and entitlements that are just running rampant. And that needs to be cut back on, as well as a lot of our social spending, but especially the Green New Deal stuff. And I think once we take it back, Leader McCarthy, who's the leader of the minority in the House, most likely going to be the Speaker of the House, has said he wants to keep our nation fiscally sound for 50 years. And when somebody says that to me, I can get on board with that. And it's going to take some hard cuts. But most things shouldn't come from the federal government. I believe in the way the Constitution was written, in that most of the power is derived from the states, and the federal government only has power that is granted to it by the states. And that's not the world that we're living in right now. But we have to take that bite of the elephant one bite at a time, start cutting back on our spending, letting the states. And I work very closely with our local state legislators and senators. They're my friends. And I want to make sure that the federal government doesn't do any harm to the miracle that is the economic miracle and the growth miracle of Texas, our lifestyle here in Texas, and pushing back when that's necessary, but defending our nation at the same time. I have introduced I have co-authored legislation with Pat Fallon of Texas that will reimburse the Texas people to the degree of $4 billion that the Texas taxpayer have already spent trying to secure the border. That is a federal job. It's written in the Constitution. They're not doing it, and Texans need to be reimbursed for that. But the Constitution is very explicit about defending the border, and this administration isn't doing it. And we talked about the costs of that, and the human cost is terrible. We need to address that constantly. And so those are things that I'm looking to doing, and we're going to have some hard choices to make whenever we are in governing power. I think we will take back the House. I know we'll take back the House. I don't know what number that is. I believe we'll take back the Senate, and we will just have to wait and see what happens in 2024. You know, this is a lot like 1979, and I was only 9 years old back then, but I remember everybody being in very poor spirits about the direction of our nation, the high inflation, the stagflation, as they called it, cars wrapped around blocks to get gasoline because there wasn't any, and the president was asleep at the wheel and seemingly impotent to protect our nation. And yet, in just another year, we elected Ronald Reagan, who reinvigorated our love of country and our desire to protect ourselves and other freedom-loving nations. And I'm a Reagan Republican. So right around the corner is our next Ronald Reagan. I think the American people want it. People ask me what I see in the polls, and I'll tell you this. As a big fan of the Top Gun movie that just came out, when people say, what are the polls saying? I said, Top Gun made $1 billion in a month. People of the people of America see our country as strong, who wants to do good, who wants to fight back against evil, who has the best people and the best equipment in the world. That's how we see our nation. We want to enjoy July 4th again, not being told that we're a terrible nation. But Ecclesiastes 1:9 said there's nothing new under the sun. 1979, we could have sworn that our nation was coming to a screeching halt. And in 1980, we elected Ronald Reagan. No matter what you think about Ronald Reagan, he reinvigorated a love of country that hadn't been seen for a long time. So 2022, we'll take back the House and hopefully the Senate, and hopefully in 2024, we'll take back the White House and reinvigorate that love of country and a desire to do good in this nation. I think that we are the bright, shining city on the hill. And I know you do too. And I know that most of our listeners do as well. And I want to say this, if I disagree with you, I'm going to do so without being disagreeable. We need to return that to our country. The algorithm of Facebook, Twitter, Instagram has led us down a path that is not sustainable. Love your neighbors. You may disagree with them, but don't silence them. Don't cancel them. We can all disagree and still love our country. But if you don't love this country, find another place to live. We're already sending illegal immigrants throughout this nation. I'm more than sure that we can find a 747 and send you over to some other nation that you deem more in line with what you believe. But we believe in the Constitution. That is our guideline in this country, and we need to follow it more.
Yeah. I believe,
but also we need to regain faith, family, and fathers in this nation. Faith, family, and fathers.
Well, it starts in the family, and if there's if we don't work on that in our hearts, we're not going to come back. So
That's right.
thank you so much for coming on. I seen you on Fox News here and there, and you've been and seen you in other things, and you come on my little old show and talk. So I really, I appreciate that, sir. And that's big for me. So I appreciate that.
It's not a little show anymore, and it's
Yeah.
great. And I love doing it. Anytime you want me on, I'll happily do it.
Thank you. I'll see you on the other side.
Yes, sir. God bless.